What's going on, YouTube? It's your boy Derry, aka the Mo, man. As you guys can see by the title, bro, we are done with the 90s, man. 90s era basketball. It is completely over. Stop living in the past. You old heads gotta stop it. I just had a debate with my uncle about this. He tried telling me nobody's ever gonna surpass him. I just gave him the death stare. I was like, bro, just stop. LeBron is 10 times better. He was better in his 5th year in the NBA. Like, it's over with. They couldn't even shoot back then. You know what I'm saying? But before we get into the video, remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on our post notification bell, bro. It's going to be a banger video. I'm going to explain to y'all why the 90s
of a
is done.
civil war. The age-old debate of past versus present has reached critical mass, and sides have been taken.
Like, they just
a revolution is taking place.
Old heads just, they hang on to it.
Old school versus new school. Back in the
and
day,
don't get me
versus
wrong.
modern day.
Don't get me wrong. Jordan was a dog. Listen, he was a dog, but he's not better than LeBron. He's not.
Story as old as time itself. I tried to ignore this bloodbath, but just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, it all got so much worse.
And then they say about the defense and stuff, but we'll get into that
NBA games
later
from
in
the
the
80s
video.
and 90s coming to light, showing that the good old days were in fact not that good. This whole time, the punishing defensive legend was actually just a bunch of plumbers camping out in the paint looking for someone to hack.
For real.
Shots clanking off the backboard, players running around aimlessly, wreaking havoc. And worst of all, Michael Jeffrey Jordan, the supposed greatest basketball player of all time, didn't even have a left hand.
No
What
left.
is going on? Have
Didn't
we
I
been
just
lied
say
to
that?
about basketball in
He
the
had no
80s
left.
and 90s? Are we really
He had
done
no
with
left.
that era of
Let me say
hoops?
y'all can
Or are
see.
we being deceived by lowlights,
He had no
misinformation, and
How are you
cherry-picked
one of the
clips?
greatest players of all time? You have no
I think
left.
I've got an answer. And some
I
of
have a
y'all
left.
ain't gonna like it.
And a 1v1 video will be coming out soon, so you guys stay tuned for that. I know y'all been wanting to see me hoop. I'm a hooper. I could be in the league, but I
Today's
just don't
video
try.
is sponsored by
I don't really
SeatGeek.
care that
The
much.
NBA season is in full swing. The MLB season is just around the corner. Your favorite artists are on tour, and y'all are gonna need some tickets. Now, you guys have used my promo code so much that SeatGeek wanted to hook you up with a new promo and a new special offer, and it's the best one yet. For the rest of the season, everyone who uses code JimmyTap punch in the experience in the league and how it's changed over completely divided fans of the NBA. I've seen well thought out video essays, hard-hitting analysis, testimonies from past and present players talking about their experience in the league and how it's changed over the years. And none of those things managed to do what these 5 simple words have done in just a week. Soon enough, the clips came rolling in of players from that era dribbling off their feet, throwing up air balls, and putting together moves that you might see at your local high school's JV game. So, for whatever it's worth,
local
here
rec,
is my
the LA
long-winded
Fitness.
take on this whole discussion.
And I'm not trying to hate on the 90s or the 80s players, like they weren't really like that, but they don't compare to us, like, not me, but like the NBA players now, you know what I'm saying?
I want to begin by saying
Like,
what this
they're just way
discourse has
better
taught me
now.
more than anything else is that NBA fans today never actually took the time to go back and watch games of the past. Brothers, I have been...
And it's really just an evolution thing. Like, as the years go on, bro, people, they evolve. Like us as humans, bro. We evolve. Everything just gets better
harping
over
on this
time.
for
I don't
years,
get why people
begging
just don't
for
think
fans of the
that's not
game,
true.
whether you are new or have been watching for years, to just
And
go
that's
back
for
and
most
watch
things.
full
Some
games.
things
Not
are
highlights,
better
not
when they're-
clips,
when it was older.
full-length
Don't get me
games
wrong.
of eras from the past. And
basketball-
after seeing this discussion devolve into where it is today, it is clear to me that most people never take the time. I'm seeing countless fans have this sort of awakening as they're watching films of these old games as if the footage was buried or lost, and it's finally being unearthed for the world to see. It's been right here on YouTube for the past 15 years. You mean to tell me the same fans who chime in with a full-blown thesis on the GOAT debate never spared the time to even watch the games they were referring to?
They don't even
I
watch
guess
the
that
games.
does explain a lot. Now, I'd like to think I'm somewhere in
old
the middle
people be
on
so
this whole
stubborn.
discussion. I have said on multiple occasions that players in today's NBA are simply more skilled than players of the past, which has resulted in
said that,
bigger
didn't
stat
I?
lines and higher point totals than ever before. It's not the defense that has gotten worse, it's the offense that has gotten better. You know, that whole spiel. But I also have an appreciation for the greats that came before and how incredible some players of past eras were. In fact, I almost feel like I'm hallucinating seeing this 90s basketball slander campaign unfold in front of my eyes. It feels like everyone's perception on the age-old debate changed literally overnight. I know that's not the case, but after seeing all of this play out, it sure feels that way. But today, I'm not just gonna show you some cherry-picked clips or unhinge this narrative even further. I'm gonna show you real film, real data, and proof of how we might actually be done with the 80s and 90s. And of course, if Michael Jordan really had no left hand. Spoiler, he did.
I mean, he obviously had a decent left, but it wasn't.
Now,
like
I have been an
crazy.
advocate for the modern players are better than players of the past movement for quite some time now. In fact, as crazy as it is for younger fans to say Michael Jordan was trash, it's just as absurd for older fans to say the game hasn't evolved and gotten better.
I'm not saying Jordan would be trash in this era.
Because that's all this
I do
debate
think
really
he would
is.
still be a
Young
dog,
fans
Kobe
versus
did
old
good.
fans, or
And he
fans
was
that
just a
watch
better
this
version of Kobe.
versus fans
Kobe
that are
copied
watching this.
MJ.
But objectively, players today are much better than they were in the 80s and even the 90s. Specifically, the lower end of the talent pool in the NBA today is vastly better than it was in the past. I think great players would be great in any era, but with the spacing, the shot making, the emphasis on offense as opposed to defense has made the depth across the NBA today just way ahead of where it was in the 80s and the 90s. There was, without exaggeration, guys in the NBA throughout the 80s and 90s that were on NBA rosters just to accumulate fouls and sit in the paint and be big. Some of these players were offensively inept, and that was okay because their role was not to create offense. But in today's NBA, where offense reigns supreme, there is no room for these players. Now, you could and should go back and watch film of games, not highlights, from this era and see just how limited the skill sets of some of these players were. The shot making, for the most part, was limited to set jumpers, slashers coming downhill for layups, and big men trying to muscle their way to a bucket down low in the midst of what appears to be a wrestling match. Catch a player off guard with the double team, and they immediately pick up their dribble. Simple things like guards turning their back to the basket 20 feet out instead of creating space off the dribble.
Hey,
Even
that's how Magic
looking
played, though.
down
But
at
Magic
the ball
was a
while
dog.
trying to get out on a fast
Magic
break
did
was
that
very
6'9", and he
common
had the
in this
vision.
era. And these aren't lowlights or cherry-picked incidences. This is just what the game looked like 35 years ago. But even without film, nearly every metric suggests modern players are more capable of players in the past.
Booty shorts
Free
on
throw
that man.
percentage was worse, three-point percentage was worse, turnover percentage was higher, they used to shoot more free throws but still ended up with far less points. Now, this is not to say that this era of hoops was trash. That's just disingenuous and flat out wrong. These were the best players in the world at the time. It was just simply not as good as what it is today. But maybe there's another layer to this that needs to be factored in to really understand why these players were not as skilled as the players of today.
Charles Barkley was a dog too.
Now, despite this being a very relevant topic for years, the idea of rule changes and how these changes have affected the game still remain a mystery to some. Players were a product of their era and the rules of their era. The first step to discovering greats of the past is to watch film of them play. The next step is to gather and understand the context of the film you are watching. When you see a 6'9" Magic Johnson go flying down the court with what looks like kind of a stiff dribble, you may think the man has no bag. But my friends, Magic Johnson did have a bag, but the rules in place at the time only allowed him to reach so far into it.
Bro, this old head I was arguing with really had the nerve to tell me LeBron is a better version of Magic Johnson. Oh, no, he's not. Don't compare LeBron to Magic Johnson. I literally just started this. Oh my goodness, you don't know what I wanted to do, right? This man was just talking so crazy. Old heads are so stubborn. They don't listen to nobody. They think they know everything. You know what I'm saying? They just think they know everything. They're just in their head. Their ego is too high. They just think they know everything. That should be blowing me. Really said LeBron is
before you got called for every violation in the rule book. Consider the fact that any move where your hand wasn't completely on top of the basketball was considered a carry. No zero steps, no gather
And I really
steps.
be
You
spinning
get
back
2
to them. They
steps,
just hate
and
it.
anything more was called a travel.
'Cause I'm younger.
No backward shuffles to create
I don't like that I'm
separation.
right.
No lunging into players to draw easy fouls. Here's a clip of Danny Ainge hitting Kevin McHale with a hezzy in the mid-80s. And the man thinks he just witnessed witchcraft.
But when practice sessions were completed, some of the most competitive competition began.
Double dribble! No, I double dribble! Double dribble, he did too. I did.
Here's some
but
more
I'm not
clips of
taking
players
any
getting
credit
called
away
for
from these
travels and
90
carries,
players.
doing moves that are very
Their skill
typical
level back
and
then
allowed
was good
in 2024.
compared to the
90%
other,
of the
like,
moves
everybody
you
was
see
like
today,
that skill
the
level.
very method
But the skill
most
level
players
now,
generate their
they don't
offense would
compare.
be called for some sort of violation 40 or 30 or even 20 years
Curry
ago.
would
And this
average,
isn't
like,
just
40
some
in that
cop-out
era.
or excuse as to why these players of the past weren't doing this stuff. The rule changes are real, documented
'Cause nobody
pieces
shot
of
threes
NBA
back then.
history. You can
And you
literally
guys know
look
that.
them up.
Most of you
The
NBA
game got
fans,
looser,
even
players
casuals
grew
know
up
that.
and shaped their game around these looser rules, and now they have free reign to let their basketball bag run wild. But that's kind of the point. Players of the past didn't grow up practicing 25-footers. They didn't work on a dozen moves to create separation. They played in offensive systems that focused on the team, the collective, schemes and sets that resembled something closer to college basketball, where ISO possessions were few and far in between, so they never developed an arsenal to counter these situations. The rules of the time limited their game, which resulted in them having a more limited skill set than players today. If Larry Bird grew up with a three-point line, he might have been the greatest long-range shooter ever.
That is true, though.
But he didn't. And as a result, he didn't shoot a lot of threes, and he wasn't as efficient as the best shooters today. We can sit here and assume these players of the past might be as capable as players today if they were playing under the same rules and conditions. But they didn't.
They might.
And I don't think we should assume that. The fact
Yeah,
is
it's-
they played in a different time
now
and
we're-
they became a product
now we're talking
of that time.
hypotheticals.
But that's not to say the game was trash back then, or
It
that the
definitely wasn't
superstars
trash.
of these eras
Nah.
couldn't compete in today's league.
Because now we're talking hypotheticals. What if? Nah, bruh. They didn't play in that era.
Now, as time goes by, I think it's easy to forget just how long ago 1980 was. 44 years ago, if my math is correct, which is in fact a very long time ago. In 1985, Magic Johnson won an NBA title, Larry Bird won the league MVP, and Michael Jordan won Rookie of the Year. That was 39 years ago from today, which is the same exact amount of time that has passed from that 1985
Old as
season
hell.
to the year the NBA was founded in 1946. Look at these clips. Do you think these players could compete with the likes of Bird, Magic, and Jordan? Let me answer that for you. No. But take the best players of the 80s and 90s, and could they compete in today's league? Absolutely. Give these guys some credit.
I think so.
Watching this today
I think
is
the
the
good
equivalent
players
of
could.
watching this in the 80s. And yet this product is
But-
vastly closer to the basketball we see today than this product was to what fans were witnessing in the 80s.
Larry
In
would
fact,
be a
we can use
dog,
different
though.
superstars as sort of a
Larry
cross-generational
remind me of
measuring
Luka.
stick to see just how stiff the
you know
competition
what?
has been
He never
over
really
the
had, like, a
years.
dribble package,
Larry and
though.
Magic played Michael, who played Kobe, who played LeBron, who has played the players of today. And
Yeah.
nowhere down this timeline was there any real jump or fall off in production or level of competition from one era to the next. Each
sure.
era had their stars. Those
there's
stars
not really a
crossed paths
face
with
right
stars
now
of other
for the
eras,
NBA. Like,
and
after
no
LeBron
one
league,
era
I don't
was
really know who's
clear-cut
gonna be the
ahead of the
face.
other. If the 80s were so
It might be
bad,
Jokic,
then why did
I don't
players of
know.
the 90s have to wait for
Maybe
those
Giannis?
guys to get old and retire to have
Giannis
a shot
is
at
a dog.
winning?
I like
And if the
Giannis.
90s were so bad, then why did players of the 2000s not win until those guys retired? We don't need to assume that adjacent eras could compete with one another because we actually
Karl
saw
Malone,
it.
weird
MJ
ass.
struggled with
If you
some of the
know, you
guys
know.
that came before him. Shaq struggled against Hakeem and Kobe struggled against MJ. LeBron
Mm-hmm.
struggled against guys like Duncan and Dirk. And players of today have struggled to get past some of the older players in the league who are a product of the previous era. Now, what we shouldn't do is jump 3 or 4
I still
eras
can't
at a
believe
time,
LeBron lost
ignoring
that finals
entire
in
decades of
2011.
evolution and saying the game back then was better or even as good as it is today. At a certain point, the knowledge and wisdom that comes from actually witnessing decades of NBA history, like some older fans have, becomes skewed and watered down by nostalgia and a generational bias. Superstars are superstars because their game transcends the era they played in, but
Yeah.
they also played in an inferior league. These two ideas are not mutually exclusive. And although generational talents of the past would do just fine today, this same logic does not apply to the vast majority of the league throughout the 80s and 90s.
That boy hated being the shadow of MJ. I don't know why though. Man wanted to be.
So if the 80s were inferior to today's league and the 90s were inferior as well, when did the NBA become not trash? Well, it depends on how you look at it. Ironically, I think there's a pretty clear distinction to the skill set of players before Michael Jordan hit his peak and after. For example, the early 90s and late 90s, although being in the same decade, were massively different in play style and skill set. Think for a second about the fact that Magic Johnson was still in his prime in the early 90s, and Allen Iverson was entering his prime in the late 90s.
That's the thing about Magic.
In less than 10 years, basketball became a massively different game. By the late 90s, the players who grew up watching Jordan fly through the air and slice up defenses were in the league and were reshaping the role that perimeter players played. Guys like Kobe Bryant, Allen Iverson, Ray Allen, Stephon Marbury, Grant Hill, Tracy McGrady, Vince Carter. All these guys came into the league around the same time and were products of what they saw MJ do throughout his career. Players with a skill set that more closely resembles what we see today than it did to the skill sets of players of the 80s and even early 90s. This is where I think most fans might make the distinction of when the league really took a leap, not in competitiveness, but rather play style. You can go back and watch these guys play, and it's not too different than watching an NBA game today. Or you can point to the shift in play style that happened in the late 2010s. After Steph Curry redefined what makes a great championship caliber player, and the league adjusted to this new three-point heavy perimeter focused style of basketball. Similar to Jordan, the kids who watched what Steph was doing in the mid-2010s emulated that style of play, tailored their games to it, and are now in the league doing things that only Steph could do a decade ago. So if we're done with the 80s and 90s, where can we look back and no longer apply this era tax on these players?
One player could do it.
I think most fans would agree that the turn of the century is where the modern era of hyper-skilled players began. You can say objectively that this era was not trash, and most players of this generation would do just fine in today's league. But if that is the case, then modern NBA fans are holding a ticking time bomb, and they might not even know it.
That boy Wemby. That boy went banana. That boy went banana. Damn, bro. You really think that man is like 7'7"? He's a dog.
When we are older and a new generation of NBA fans claim our favorite players, the guys we grew up watching, are not as good as the players of the future,
that should not be fair. Bro is 7'7". Just pull it up. Just hush. Hush. Like, what?
You have to say, right now, there is no one in the world who can shoot like Steph Curry. But inevitably, there will be. And eventually,
we watch Steph, it really just looked like he's just throwing that up.
Shoot like him. His records will fall, his percentages won't look as good through the lens of 2040, and although his legacy will be cemented, his actual game will be put into question. And based on the arguments I'm hearing today on why past players were trash, we will have nothing to say that will change their minds. We know that Curry was the first to do what he's doing. He is a pioneer of the modern NBA. We have context to back up our claims. But if we aren't willing to hear older fans out today, what makes us think younger fans will hear us out in the future?
I get it.
Mark my words.
That's true. It's true. I get it. Okay, I apologize. I apologize to all the old heads. I get it. Because that is true. When I'm like 40, maybe in like 50, 60, and I'm trying to teach, like a little kid, like I'm just trying to teach him the game. I'm trying to tell him what's up. I'm gonna be telling him, yeah, like nobody was better than Steph Curry. And he's gonna be like, no, this guy was better. This guy's so much better, so much better. I'm gonna just be like, nah, bro. You didn't watch Steph Curry like I watched him. You don't know who Steph Curry is. That boy was the greatest shooter of all time. He's like, nah. This person's way better. They just get better over time.
There will be a day when young fans will go back, watch film of LeBron, and say he couldn't compete with players of the future.
Yep,
In fact, it's already happening. Fans saying he has no bag. Younger players putting up bigger numbers than he ever did. Skill sets a bit deeper with games that look more polished. It's all fun and games now to crack jokes about past eras. But our day will come too.
I feel like this is only in the NBA though.
But
have you guys
Giannis
noticed
could
that?
only run and dunk. Your era was trash. Y'all had a dude who couldn't get 2 feet off the ground running the whole league. You can scramble to pull up clips and show the numbers, but their minds will already be made up. This is why I think it is so important to have genuine, thought-out discourse about the game if you're truly a fan of
the
it.
NFL?
But to all of the older fans out there, you kinda started this whole thing. For years, we heard y'all badmouth modern players, saying the league is soft, players today couldn't compete back then. Back in my day, real men played the game. Y'all cannot be mad that some fans...
We played defense. We did all this. No. They did start it. If we're being honest, they did start it.
...are done with the 80s and 90s when y'all never even gave modern basketball a chance. Sure, a lot of fans never took the time to go back and watch the greats of the past, but let's be honest for a second. Older fans don't watch games today. They catch a stray clip on Facebook of LeBron flopping, and like an echo chamber of disgruntled old men, they just start firing away in the comments, agreeing with one another.
They don't even watch the game.
Y'all asked for this. I've been watching the NBA since the mid-2000s. Kobe, D-Wade, McGrady, Iverson, Shaq, Nash, those were my guys.
Vince
but
Carter.
I can acknowledge those greats and say they were incredible, while also acknowledging that version of the NBA as a whole was not as refined or as good as it is today.
Never seen no boy dunk like him in a
to make
game.
that distinction in 20 years when some snot-nosed brat tells me my glorious king was trash? I'm not so sure.
Glorious king. I don't know. I feel like it's gonna be even the players now. Like I don't see any of them surpassing LeBron. Like they're good skill-wise, but I don't see it.
It's time to once and for all take a real close look at this accusation that Michael Jordan did not have a left hand. I felt like I was having a bad dream when I first saw this claim, but unfortunately, I was not. I feel like no one actually believes this. This is just some high-level trolling. But in an effort to stop this nonsense from spreading any further, I have no choice but to take these accusations seriously. So I selected 8 random games ranging from Michael Jordan's rookie season all the way up to the mid-90s.
He looked way more flashier than LeBron. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, he had more swagger than LeBron. Way more swagger. Jordan did that, like, with ease, it looked like. Not gonna lie to you.
And play-by-play gathered all of his possessions throughout these games, charted when he went to his right, when he went to his left, and what those possessions resulted in. And here is what I found. Jordan made a move with his left hand or his right hand 227 times. Of those 227 moves, 121 of them were with his right hand and 106 of them were with his left hand. Of the 121 right-handed moves, he passed up or got fouled on 54 of them. So I didn't bother charting those. 65 of these moves resulted in a shot, in which he made 63% of them and only turned the ball over 2 times. Now, moves that he made with his left hand resulted in a pass or him getting fouled 45 times, while 55 of these left-handed moves ended up in a shot, in which he made 51%, and 6 moves resulted in a turnover. So based on this data, Jordan was definitely more comfortable going right, especially near the rim and even on mid-range jumpers. He struggled a bit in comparison to his right whenever he pulled up off of a left-handed dribble. But overall, Jordan went to his left 47% of the time, and although it was his weaker hand, he was still above league average even while going to his left. But 8 games in 350 minutes of basketball is a relatively small sample size. So I looked into it further and found this. A detailed breakdown of Michael Jordan's shot chart and shot tendencies in 3 seasons from 1990 to 1992. 126 games and over 4,800 minutes in total, tracking exactly what Michael did on the court for 3 seasons. And here's what the data shows. In total, Michael made 1,074 moves in isolation, going either to his right or to his left hand. 48% of those moves were with his right hand, and 52% of those moves were with his left hand. When going to the right, Michael shot 61.7% on 410 shots with 15 turnovers, resulting in 1.38 points per possession. When going to his left, Michael shot 61.3% on 421 shots with 36 turnovers, resulting in 1.31 points per possession. So even with a much larger sample size, Michael not only had a left hand, he went to it just as often as he went to his right and was nearly as proficient with his left as he was with his right.
I'm gonna continue to
now,
troll.
For some
He don't got
context,
no
throughout
left.
this 3-year span, Michael made on average 4.4 left-handed isolation moves, or in this case, isolation possessions, that resulted in 1.31 points per possession. Now, here are some prolific scores from this season and their overall tendencies and efficiency in
if you had to
isolation.
pick one or two,
keep in mind, this data
I'm gonna
includes
pick
both
Jordan
right-handed
on looks,
and left-handed moves from
like
these players.
flashiness, but
And
LeBron
now
is better. I'm sorry.
is Michael Jordan with
sorry,
just
sorry,
his
but
left
not
hand.
sorry.
So, yeah, I'd say contrary to what has now
And
become
that's the
popular
great thing
belief,
about sports.
Michael Jordan.
That's the great thing about sports. We're gonna debate. That's what people love about sports. Who's to debate next? Why do you think in football they're trying to do Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady so quick? They're trying to get those two GOAT debates already. Patrick Mahomes has only played for 7 years, 6 years. Been to what, 4 or 5 Super Bowls. Won 3. Or was 3 or is it 2? I think it's 2. I'm not too sure. It's 2. But you know what I mean, but like they're just trying to, like, people like that. That's what people like about sports.
Had a left hand.
Who's better?
And
Who's
I
not
cannot
better?
believe we had to dig into the data to come to this conclusion. I think the overall idea that the 80s and 90s were a far less skilled time in the NBA compared to today is probably fair. I mean, you'd be crazy to think the game hasn't evolved in 4 decades. But to say the league was trash back then is just wrong. I think more than anything, it's the style of play and the way basketball games would unfold back then that really throws some fans off when they go to watch film of these old games. It's like looking at a box score from the mid-2000s and thinking everyone sucked because the games finished with final scores in the 80s. But the players weren't bad, it was just a different game back then. It was slower, more methodical, more team and scheme-based than it is today. And similarly, I think you could say the 80s and 90s had its fair share of bad basketball. But that doesn't mean all the players were bad, especially the superstars of those eras. That was just the state of the game they were playing in. I think some older fans have a skewed perception of how good the game was back then, but I also think they just genuinely liked that style of ball regardless of the evolution of the league. In 20 years, there could be a dozen players around the league that shoot like Steph Curry, but I doubt we will hold the same appreciation and affinity for those players as we did to the guy who pioneered this style of play and did it during the good old days. In the 90s, no one looked back at how the league was in the 60s claiming it was better.
It's just too
and so
modern,
realistically,
too
we
quick.
shouldn't be looking back at the 80s and
Like, they're
90s
just too
claiming the
good
league
now.
was superior than it is today, or even just
They're
as good
just
for
too
that
good
matter.
now.
A lot
Like,
of these
people
ideas
don't like
that favor
that.
modern basketball are becoming more mainstream as fans dive deeper into these topics
exactly.
and add context to narratives that have been floating around for decades. But I think this push to be done with the 80s and 90s is a bit overkill. We want to add context and nuance and knowledge to these discussions, not remove entire decades from it altogether. Sadly, I don't think any of this has or will change anyone's mind. This revolt against old school ball was either confirmation of what you already thought, or this entire discussion is just blasphemy to you. Are we done with the 80s and 90s? Maybe, but for the sake of the game and the greats that paved the way, I sure hope not.
It was 40 years ago. We're done. We're done. Hey, man. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. We're done. We're done with the 80s and 90s. That we gotta cut that stuff out. We could still talk about it, but the 2010s up, they're taking over. They've been taken over. It's been done. Next time you're in a debate with somebody that's about the 80s, football, basketball, baseball, just look at them and start laughing. Because they don't know what they're talking about. They're stuck in the past. But you can kind of understand from their point of view, but they're like holding on to it so much that they just can't let go. It's just something in their brain that's just like, no, I can't. This is what the first thing that I saw type. That's just how it is. That's just how the brain is operated and hardwired. This is the first thing. Like, no, they know what's better. They know we're more skilled now. They know players now are way better than players back then. The players back then were plumbers. They had part-time jobs at Walmart and Walgreens. You know what I'm saying? They weren't good. But anyways, before we get out of this video, man, I hope you guys just remember to like, comment, subscribe, turn on the post notification bell. Let me know if you guys want some more sports content, bro. I can give y'all some tips, you know what I'm saying, so we can talk about this. We done with the 90s though, bro. Milkman out.
खत्म बाय बाय टाटा गुड बाय